We're going to look at standardised scores, and we're going to start off looking at how it's useful. So let's say two different students were given two different tests and we want to compare these tests. So in this case they've done a maths and English mock with the results, Carwyn and Zach, and we've also got the test mean mark. That means on average how everyone in the year did in that test, and the test standard deviation. And I've got to comment on these and who I think did better overall. Well, if I have a look at the individual marks, Carwyn didn't do as well as Zach in English but did better in maths. And if you have a look at the mean, there's quite a lot of information going on there, and I've even got standard deviation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little sketch, assuming these are normally distributed, and have a bit of an idea of what they might look like. Okay, so here's some sketches, one for English, one for maths, and as you can see I've got the average here, the mean in the middle, and I've just noted on the number here and here. And I'm just using these to represent one standard deviation each time. Now be aware this is a sketch, it's not precise, but I can use it to get an idea of what's going on here. Now you don't have to draw this every time we do it, I just want to give you an overall view. So English, my deviation is 12, so let's have a look what that would look like. So if I add 12 here, I'd get 62, 74 and 86, and the other direction I'd have 38, 26 and 14. Okay, so if I look at my test results for Carwyn and Zach, Carwyn for English got 46, which is less than 50 and would be probably around here. That's Carwyn. And Zach got around 55, which is around here. Zach. So that's what they would look like, and I'm going to do the same for maths. Okay, and that's what Zach and Carwyn's results would look like for maths. If you notice, Zach got exactly the mean there, 42. Okay, now the idea with standardised is to have a look comparing these two things. So imagine that I were to cut out the English one and put it on top of maths and see comparatively how Zach and Carwyn have done. Now obviously I haven't drawn them exactly the same, but I'm having a look at the idea comparatively who's done better. Okay, now it's not a very accurate way of doing this because this is all sketches and having a look general idea, so we're going to look at it using some numbers so we can compare it a little bit more accurately. So obviously the mean is different for both of these, but what we're really looking at is the distance here between the mean and the standard deviation, and this is called a standardised score. When we look at the difference proportionately here, what we're actually looking at is how many standard deviations is the result above or below the mean. We actually talk about how many above the mean it is, so if it's below, that's negative. Now, if they had exactly 62 here, that would be one standard deviation, and that would be easy. Or if they had 74, that would be two standard deviations, or if they had 38, that would be negative one standard deviation. But you can see that both of these are less than one standard deviation, one above and one below. So we need to work out how many standard deviations, well, 0 point something of a standard deviation it is. Well, let's zoom right in here and we'll have a look what fraction of this it is along here. Well, if that's 50, and we know that Zach got 55 and this is 62, well, the fraction of this is this distance here, 5 out of the total distance, which is 12. So that would be their fraction, which is 0.4167. And for Carwyn, what would the fraction be here? Well, Carwyn got 46, so it's negative 4 because it's 4 below, but still out of 12. Because his whole distance would also be 12, which is negative 0.3333, etc. Okay, well that's useful if I have drawn this diagram, but how could I generalise this and I can check it with my maths results, because I don't want to have to draw this out every single time. It would be really nice just to have a formula. So let's see if we can derive this formula for standardised score. Okay, well, for my example, how did I get this 5 up here? Well, that was the distance between the score that Zach got and the mean. So it's the score take away the mean, the distance there. and it was all divided by this 12, this distance, which was my standard deviation. Standard deviation. And that is your formula for how to calculate the standardised score, and hopefully you understand it a little bit. And let's now use this to calculate the standardised score for their maths scores. Carwin's maths score was 45 and the mean was 42. So his distance was 3 above the mean, and the standard deviation for maths was 8, so it would be 3/8, and to 4 decimal places, well, there's actually only 3 decimal places to this number, 0.375. Okay, so that means Carwin's maths mark was 0.375 standard deviations above the average, above the mean. And for Zach's maths score was 42. Well, we already know that was exactly on the mean, so if you say how many standard deviations above or below the mean, well, none. Well, let's just check. That's his score, 42, take away the mean, 42 divided by 8 will be 0 divided by 8, which is just 0. Okay, but I haven't actually answered the question yet, because the question says, comment on the test performances of the two students. Who do I think did better overall? So I've got to do two things: to comment on the test performances and then give an opinion on who I think has done the best. So first of all, let's comment on these results. Let's have a look. Where is the lowest standardised score and where is the highest standardised score? Well, the lowest is going to be here, Carwin, because it's negative, means he did worse than the average in English. And the best here is 0.4167, which is Zach here. Now, when you actually compare their maths results, Carwin did better because he got above the average by 0.375, 3/8 of a standard deviation, whereas Zach got exactly the average. So I'm going to write that down in a sentence basically saying who got the lowest and the highest, comparing how they did in English and comparing how they did in maths, and then I'll draw a conclusion. So what I've said is the lowest standardised score is this negative one obtained by Carwin in English, and the best is 0.4167, which Zach did in English, but I've also said that Carwin did better than Zach in maths because he got a higher standardised score, and overall Zach seems to be better as he didn't get any negative standardised score, and none of his results were below the average. So with standardised scores, we're comparing two sets of data and we're looking at proportionally how many standard deviations these results are above the average result.